been there, the best storytellers from around the world. 3 days of it. Okay? Jonesboro, Tennessee, extreme eastern Tennessee, the oldest town in Tennessee up in the mountains. And there will be 10 to 12,000 people there each day. And it is, I can attest that not only will they have you laughing until you fall out of your seat, but 2 minutes later they could have the entire audience sitting there in tears. Phenomenal to have that audience right in the palm of their hand. All right. Since you had one last week, you know what the Better Speaker Series is. It's done by Toastmasters with some suggestions and ideas how we can improve in areas of speech giving. Mark Twain once said, "If you have nothing to say, say nothing." We've got a lot to say, because I thought I understood speaking. I learned so much from this block having to do with beginning a speech. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of the things that I observed at the National Storytellers Gathering of how to conduct an introduction and begin a speech. Now, I always thought we have introduction, we have body, and we have a conclusion, a closing for our speeches. But what I learned there is the introduction to your speech starts not when the speaker gets up there, but when the introducer introduces that speech. I'm going to give you an example. One of my favorite storytellers down there is a fellow by the name of Bill Lepp. So the introducer comes up to the stage, big smile on her face. She's excited. She wants to tell about this, introduce this guy. She said, Bill Lepp grew up in a little town in Minnesota. He attended a small college up there. Then he went on to the seminary. He became a Methodist minister. He's practicing his ministry in West Virginia 5 years. And this little old lady walks up to him and she goes, "Oh, Pastor Bill, you give the most interesting sermons." He said, "Have you ever heard of the National Liars Contest? They're holding it in 2 weeks out in West Virginia. I think you could win." He didn't quite know how to take this, but guess what? He checked on the National Liars Contest. Entered himself, won first place. For 5 years in a row, this guy won first place. Now, the 6th year he comes back, the judges corner him. They said, "Look, Bill, no one else has a chance when you're competing. We're going to make you a judge." She says, "I want to introduce the best buyer in the country, Bill Lepp." All right, now, she accomplished a number of things that a good introduction does. You want to give some kind of a background about the speaker. Then you want to tell something about what he's going to say. Now, we're all on the edge of our seats because we know we're going to hear some good lies. And he fulfilled every bit of our expectations. So in other words, it sets the stage for you. And that's why we, as speakers, need to do a better job of giving a proper introduction to the person who's going to introduce us, because they set the stage for us. Now, how do you go about producing a successful opening? All right? Well, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to get the attention of the audience. we've got to get them listening to us. I was at a very large gathering of the National Marriage Encounter one time, and the introducer had done a terrible, terrible job. You've got 400 people out here that are talking to each other, jabbering away, and the speaker steps up on the stage. And everyone continues talking. So he stood there. Pretty soon there's less talking. People are looking up trying to figure out what the devil is doing. And he stays like this. And the audience is finally quiet. I'll be darned, there's nothing there. But he grabbed the audience. He had the attention of everyone there. There are many, many techniques for getting that attention. In this particular case, mine was probably not that good an example. But I noticed everyone at least was paying attention, trying to figure out what is he doing. We got to have the audience right here. Now, we've got to also introduce the topic. We've got to tell people, what are we going to talk about? And why is that important? Because I'm sitting in that audience and I'm wondering, what's in it for me? I want to know what I'm going to get out of whatever that topic is. All right? Otherwise, if I don't know what I'm going to get, pretty soon I'm just going to, so what? So let them know what the topic is. Let them know why it's important to that audience. In this case right here, it's important to every one of us here because we're all here to be better speakers. And it doesn't do any good to speak if there's no audience listening. So those are the things that we can do. Now, the other thing to do is establish rapport. And I was amazed at how many times I see this right here. There are people that when their name is called to give a speech, they bounce out of that chair, they're walking up here, they've got a big smile on their face. They want to tell the audience what they're going to talk about. They also are looking at that audience, establishing eye contact. Steps to take to get good rapport. When you come up, show you're excited about what you want to do, that you really have something to tell people. It makes a huge difference. Now, the other thing is an introduction shouldn't take more than 5 to 10% of that entire speech. Okay? You got to grab them in early on. You got to get into the body of what you're really talking about, and then wrap it up with a conclusion. All right? These are things that you want to do when you start with your introduction to your speech. Now, state the importance of your topic, okay? These are techniques that we can use as when we get up to speak. We're going to tell the listeners what we're going to talk about and why it's important, and relate it to them, okay? Now, the top, our opening, we're going to relate to the topic, we're going to relate to the audience, and we're going to relate to the event. Now, you can do that by making a startling statement. I stand before you as a world-renowned statistician, and I say, statistically, the odds are 1 in 6 that one of us in this room will be dead in 12 months. Now, that'd catch my attention. I mean, I bet Tom and I are looking at each other and wondering which of us is going to go first, okay? A startling statement. Now, you can arouse suspense and curiosity. If I stepped up here and said, I'm going to tell you about how I was blinded and the miraculous steps that led to the recovery of my sight. Now, that might arouse some curiosity. How did it happen? How did you ever get your sight back, Vince? Okay. Another thing that we can do, arouse that curiosity. Now, tell a story. Try to make it something personal, rather than say the man out there or whatever. 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were driving in the mountains of eastern Tennessee, when all of a sudden, the hurricane's result showed up in blinding rain that left us incapable of going any further because the road was gone in front of us. Start a story. Okay, a rhetorical question. I think this is probably one of the best questions. If we asked in this room, how many of you would know what to do if your child was choking? Catch my attention. I'm not sure. I'd like to learn because I want to protect that life. More techniques that we can utilize. Another thing we can do is start with a quotation. Mark Twain, or quotations can come from anywhere. They can come out of a movie. Nobody puts baby in the corner. Okay? Or it can come from something the president said. Something like, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My favorite that comes to mind all the time was my dad. Throughout the time I was growing up, my dad would say, we're creatures of habit, Vince. Be careful the habits you create. I didn't figure that one out early enough. All right. And then, why would you want to use a quote? Well, a quote adds authority. If President Kennedy said this, Albert Einstein said this, it adds authority to the whole thing. And then, they can also be something amusing. They can make you laugh, catch your attention there. And then they can dramatize some point in your speech. Okay? Again, we're taking it back to the topic and why it's important. Okay? Now, they can also be referencing the occasion. One of the introducers at National Storytellers stepped up there and said, you are sitting on the very spot where 42 years ago, the first International Storytelling Festival occurred. The first speaker stepped up onto the back of a wagon. 24 people were gathered around on hay bales in a semicircle in front of it. That was the origin of the National Storytellers Gathering. This is the 43rd anniversary. Okay. Related to something that we're actually in, and give a little history of what the event. Now, there are a lot of other techniques that you can use. Humor is a good one. Carrie is an excellent example of that. Dave uses excellent humor in his. Audience participation, okay? Another way of getting people involved. A demonstration. My wife used to do training sessions all around the United States for the National Bankers Association. Frequently, she would start out with a rope trick. People are, watching, how did she do that? Okay, but she got them involved with a demonstration. And then invariably at the end of the speech, she'd say, who wants to know how to do it? Well, everyone wants to know how to do it. So she'd bring that conclusion right back to that opening that she used. Again, a reference to a historical event, the one I told you about, the National Storytellers. Okay, now there's some openings to avoid that really struck me. Someone steps up in front of you and they say, this probably isn't going to be very good because I really didn't spend a lot of time on it. Now, I don't know what your response is. My first one is, well, then why bother? Okay? Put the time and effort in it. Come across with the enthusiasm for what you're doing. Okay. Another one that would be worth avoiding is don't be dull and boring, okay? Throw your hands up. Show that you got excitement about what you're talking about. Act enthusiastic, okay? I don't see that happen here, but I'll tell you what, I saw a lot of it when I was involved with Dale Carnegie. And then, some people think this is an exciting way of doing a speech. They don't tell what the topic is going to be, like they're creating curiosity. What they're creating is, why should I listen? Tell me what you're going to talk about, and then turn around and do it with enthusiasm and how it's going to benefit me. Because we're all sitting there as an audience asking that very question. How is it going to benefit me? Now, a dynamic beginning is essential for a successful speech. I'd have to agree with that, okay? It really is. In order to get people involved so they're listening and paying attention, you got to have something to get their attention. All right? Also, when you're speaking, the power of applause is unbelievable. And I saw this so many times down at the National Storytellers. You want to get some people wondering what the devil's next? What's wrong? Why is he doing that? Silence. Okay. Now, all we've done here is talk about some of the things that we can possibly, techniques we can use to give ourselves a better opening, to attract people's attention, to maintain their attention. And when you see an audience that is held right in the speaker's hand, everyone is watching. They're paying attention. Wow!